Good evening and welcome to the June 28th edition of the Gold, Goats, and Guns live show. My name's Tom Luongo. It is Friday. It's been a long week. I don't know about you guys, but I'm whooped, and it doesn't look like it's going to get anything easier this weekend. So I hope everybody's had an enjoyable week. I'm sorry I haven't been able to do any kind of interstitial streams during the week. It's just been terribly busy. I did record another episode with a friend of the channel, Crypto Rich, yesterday. We'll probably be putting that out over the weekend. Hopefully I'm going to get some time tomorrow to do some edit to it and gussy it up and that whole thing, and I'll get that out and get that uploaded tomorrow. So I hope everybody's had a great week. Let's do the general introductions thing as we go along here. You can follow my work over at tomluongo.me. I've got a brand new blog post up this afternoon about Bitcoin and what I want to talk about tonight, which is the kind of functional split that still exists within the Austrian economics community about Bitcoin and why it's still thought of weirdly and negatively by some very prominent Austrians. A couple of whom I used to and still do. Some I still have tremendous respect for, and some I no longer do. So we're going to talk about that tonight. Which can maybe just be a little bit, I don't know. I'm going to knock down some heroes today. I think it's going to be fun. But you can follow me over at tomluongo.me. You can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. You can also follow me pretty much every Friday. I'm trying to make sure that I get published on every Friday over at moneyandmarkets.com, run by my great, my good and dear friend, Christian Hill. So, and of course, there's the weekly article over at Strategic Culture Foundation as well, where we discuss geopolitics. But tonight we're going to talk a little bit more monetary theory. I wanted to do a little bit more of this on the channel because the geopolitics stuff is, I don't know, it's kind of on autopilot at this point. There's not really all that much to talk about. I mean, I know the G20 is going on. I know all that stuff's happening, but like, did anything happen today that at the G20 that anybody couldn't have predicted? Not really. Trump and Putin talked and nothing happened. The reporters made jackasses out of themselves. Woo! So, you know, what else is new? All right. Tom enjoys naked, drunk French models. Yeah. And who doesn't? All right, let's get started. So what I want to talk about tonight is the monster week that Bitcoin had, as well as, I'm just got to get my notes going here. Okay, so the monster week that Bitcoin had, the monster week actually that gold had as well. Remember last week gold popped through 1,400, which, if for those of you who don't know, is quite the technical breakout that we've been kind of waiting for the past 3 years. And that was a significant, as far as I'm concerned, very significant event. I was hoping to see that weekly close from last week above 1375 translate into a monthly close today, because today was the last trading day of the quarter for gold, and then of the month in June, and then thereby it being June, it would be the last trading day of the quarter. So this will be a weekly, monthly, and quarterly close above a significant technical level. This is the kind of multiple time fractal series breakout that is of immense technical weight and power. Okay, these are the kinds of events that happen very rarely, generally once every cycle is the best way to put it. They don't happen often. Depending on the thing you're talking about, that cycle could be 4.5 years, could be 8 years, could be whatever it is. In the case of gold, we're now talking about a significant breakout that you could make the argument in the dollar, and be hard pressed not to make this argument, that now against every currency in the world, gold is in a bull market. This would be now what we consider a secular bull market. Now, speaking of secular bull markets, Bitcoin's been in a secular bull market since the day the blockchain went live. So it's fascinating to see how this has played out over the course of time. I've been interested in Bitcoin since June of 2010. I wrote an article in June 20th, 2010 it was published on Lew Rockwell. I've talked about this before, and I reference it in my article this morning, just to remind everybody how long I've been involved in Bitcoin. Now I'm going to give you some background on this as to why I think it's important, but understand that from the moment I read the white paper, I happened to be somebody at that time who was really thinking about how could you hack an unhackable currency. I was doing so for a writing project. At the time, I was really thinking about writing a big science fiction story, and I needed to theorize a money other than credits that would be usable in a spacefaring civilization. I was really thinking about this for weeks on end. I was doing this and racking my brains about how to create such a thing. And what was really interesting is that deep in the throes of this, while I was working in South Florida, and I spent a lot of time in the car listening to Austrian economics lectures and thinking about this stuff and really trying to put myself into it. Then one day I'm on the Daily Poll and I see this thing, what is Bitcoin? I'm like, click. I go over there, I look through the forums for about 20 minutes, then I read the white paper. I'm like, oh, fuck, they did it. They built my currency. Well, shit, now what? Well, this is kind of cool, but, is it going to go anywhere, right? Is it going to happen? Is it going to do anything? Later on, I was writing I've started a lot of projects and tried a lot of things and done a lot of different types of writing over the years. And I've got unpublished writing about, writing that no one will ever see, but in which back in 2011, I was writing the story and the main character had to go underground. In a modern police state, you had to go underground. And, while she was going underground, I'm like, we're going to use this unhacked. We're going to use some, I called it it was a proxy for Bitcoin in the story, thinking, no, nobody knows what the hell Bitcoin is. So I'll call it Digitcoin. And I'll, write about this and how she was literally living her life already like that in the underground economy, being able to immediately transfer and get paid in offshore banks and the whole 9 yards. I'm like, I got it all worked out, presaging exactly what would happen. Had I actually published those stories today, I'd be a sage, right? But it's not really. That's what's really interesting, because of course I didn't have the courage of my convictions. I had the courage of my original intuitions about Bitcoin, because I found it interesting. I found it fascinating. It was kind of cool. I stayed up with the ecosystem for the first year or two, seeing if it was, was it going to evolve? Was there going to be something that would show me that it was really getting outside of this very, very small niche marketplace? Was there any kind of real adoption? And I wasn't thinking about it in terms of a bigger picture. I was really thinking about it. Are people going to start using this thing? Can I see a real use case thing? And I didn't see it. I mean, again, I was over on Mt. Gox very early on, trading Bitcoins at 5.5 cents a piece. Every time I log into Open Ledger today, for example, the crypto exchange, and I see, things, I see BitShares trading for 6 cents. It just reminds me of what it was like back in the original days of Mt. Gox. Exactly the same stuff. And it was fascinating just thinking about this, just like going down this trip through memory lane today and reminding myself about, while that article was being worked on, the feedback I got from Lew Rockwell about the article, about what I needed to change because he didn't like the conclusion. And it reminded me of so many things. And it was at that moment that he gave me the best piece of advice I think I've ever gotten from anybody. And that piece of advice was, let 1,000 flowers bloom. Now, what Lew means by that, and he's used that phrase in his own writings and whatnot, but what he means by that is that this thing that you see here, Tom, that you're really excited about and you think is really cool, this Bitcoin, is a potential solution to the problem. And a potential solution to the problem, bad and corrupt money, which creates a bad and corrupt society, which is what we have today. There are many potential solutions to this problem. You may be right, and he said this. I mean, I remember the email very, very, very distinctly. He said, you may wind up being right about this, but we can't talk about it in these terms today. I don't think it would be smart to do so. It wouldn't be. It would be better if you think about this in a more, kind of philosophical way. And so I did, and I went back and I rewrote the ending, and it's much better. And this is why Lew is a great publisher and a great libertarian and a great entrepreneur. And while I'm still learning, And certainly at the time, and I go back and I read the work that I wrote back then, and I'm like, oh my God, it's impenetrable, right? But what was important to me then was that, and what got impressed upon me by that one little piece of advice. And I say that's the best piece of advice I've ever gotten. There's many others that I got from the original crew at Lew Rockwell. I learned a lot from just reading those men, and certainly Gary North and many others. What I learned, but that piece of advice put me on the path to saying, look, just because you don't see a solution to a problem doesn't mean that one doesn't exist. This is something that happens all the time whenever we get into a political argument of some form or another. Medicare for all, tranny bathrooms, yada yada, all this stuff, right? It doesn't matter what it is. How are we going to deal with the poor? How are we going to deal with this? Well, invariably, what happens whenever we start having a political discussion amongst ourselves, with your friends or your coworkers at a water cooler or whatever, the metaphoric water cooler, is that everybody takes out a position and then fights amongst themselves as to which one's better, laying aside the idea that neither of them may be right. They might both be wrong. That there's some other solution out there. The problem that most statists, as opposed to most libertarians, you can always tell the difference between a real true libertarian and one that isn't. This is where the rubber meets the road for me. Is just saying, look, we see a problem, we specify a problem, and then there's going to be the status will almost invariably say we have to select this thing for practical reasons. We have to do this. We have to create this law or create this thing because we need to do something now. This is a solution that can't wait for us to solve, or let the market solve tomorrow or whatever. I'm like, that's exactly the wrong way of looking at it. The libertarian, of course, says, well, just because you can't think of anything doesn't mean that the problem doesn't exist. And the statist will invariably challenge the libertarian and say, okay, well, if you don't like public roads, well, what do we do about, well, how do we change that? Well, what do we do? And if you don't have an answer to that question immediately, because maybe you hadn't thought about, how to deal with, how to go to a perfectly private road system, you don't have an answer off the top of your head, then you lose the argument and they win. They get to walk away going, see, you don't know. And it's like, no, this is not a dick swinging contest. This is about solving real problems. And remember that the truth of the matter is that just because you and I, who may be very smart people and maybe very well-informed people, may still not have enough information to make a good decision about solving this problem. Here's one today. They're all arguing at the G20 about plastic in the oceans. But what are they going to do about it? Well, the governments are still arguing amongst themselves. What are we going to do with all this plastic in the oceans? And, the Democrats, in various places pass all these anti-straw laws and, anti-plastic straw laws and all this crap. Like I go to Gainesville, I can't even get a fucking straw anymore. Not that I ever used a straw at a restaurant anyway. I always just, drink straight out of the glass because I'm contrary that way. Because I literally do not care. But I then read about some kid who created a garbage trawler that just goes out and trawls the stuff up on the surface of the ocean and picks it up and brings it home. And people just create solutions to stuff, right? They just create solutions. At the end of the day, that's all we should be doing. We should only care about solutions. Just because I don't have an answer to the monetary system problem, just because I don't have an answer, doesn't mean one doesn't exist. Moreover, just because I have decided that I have an answer that's a good answer, doesn't mean it's the only answer. Social problems are not discrete math problems, meaning 2 + 2 = 4. That does not mean that homeless people plus taxes equals free health care. Okay? For example. Okay, it doesn't work that way. There are many solutions to these problems because people are not fungible in that respect. That everybody's desires for each other, for what they need and what they want are completely different. And therefore, no particular solution will ever fit everybody's needs. This is the problem with having one world reserve currency. This is the problem with having any one-size-fits-all solution to a problem. I say all the time, all laws are dangerous and stupid. Even laws against murder discriminate against murderers. Now, whether anybody cares or puts a value on discriminating against murderers, I certainly don't. You're still discriminating at a certain level. You're still setting a dangerous, the precedent itself is still dangerous in and of itself as a mechanism. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have laws against murder. We should encourage people to murder. Obviously not. We should not encourage people but the question is, we know that people are going to murder. What do we do about it, right? That's the whole purpose of the law. It's the whole purpose of society, is to have a reaction plan when the unthinkable or the untoward or the merely inconvenient occur. But when we come to money, this is where the Austrians have a real problem. Because the Austrian school, over the course of the last 50 or 60, 70 years, since Mises and Rothbard were writing in their prime, hitched onto the fact that it was the discipline of the gold standard that kept our society in line, right? And that, Mike Shedlock had a great post today about about China and their and the capital flight and all this stuff. And embedded in that article, about 2/3 of the way down, he just puts up the chart of the U.S. never ran a trade deficit of any significant number until 1971, and then it persistently ran a trade deficit since then. I think there's a correlation. Once you abandon the discipline of gold convertibility, then governments can run deficits all the time and create structural imbalances, and then we live in what I consider Milton Friedman's nightmare, which is competitively devaluing currencies that are based on debt and based on the future labor of the holders of this debt-based currency. And we spend our grandchildren in the debtor's prison, and the bill is going to have to come due one of these days. And that event created those events, which then brings us to 2008 when the financial crisis occurs. And then finally in 2009, even though the idea for Bitcoin's been around for almost a decade, Satoshi Nakamoto then puts that idea into practice in the form of Bitcoin. And I've always said that Bitcoin is alpha code that went viral. No one expected it to be as successful as it has. And so, but the Austrian school is still stuck in this paradigm that we have to go back to gold to anchor the monetary system. Now, they're right that we have to go back to gold in the absence of any other potential solutions to the problem of fiscal restraint on governments by having a private money system. Just because gold is a solution doesn't mean it's the solution. This is the point. So when I see Peter Schiff yesterday or Wednesday during the big pump and dump breakdown, put up this asinine freaking tweet, and now I got to go find it because I had it open, and now I'm going to go get it, and I'm going to read this tweet to y'all, and I'm going to tell you what I think about it. So there's Schiff, the ultimate still head stuck in the sand Austrian economist gold bug, along with, unfortunately, one of my other heroes, Gary North, and Bob Wenzel of Economic Policy Journal, and even Mike Shedlock. All guys who I have tremendous respect for. Wenzel I don't particularly always agree with, but guys I have had massive respect for in times past, who have taught me a lot, on whose shoulders I certainly try to stand. The giants on whose shoulders I try to stand, right? Here's Peter Schiff. The idea that Bitcoin is just like gold is utter nonsense. Bitcoin is nothing like gold. It's fool's gold. Like it's fucking pyrite or some shit. No, there is not a single use case where Bitcoin can be used as a substitute for gold. Plus, the gold price never falls over 25% in less than 24 hours. To which I replied, because Mike Shedlock then asked me, well, and I come back and somebody asked me for a reply to that. And I said, well, that's just Schiff talking his book because he's a moron. You can look it up. That's what I said. I was like, I'm not going to spend more than 4 seconds on Peter Schiff bashing Bitcoin again while he takes Bitcoin for gold on his freaking website. Oh, by the way. Like, when I say that I met Peter Schiff and wasn't impressed, it was because he was using the same stupid, tired talking points that he was using in 2008. I met him in 2013. Like, the world has evolved past this, Pete. Are you kidding me? You're still giving me that shit. Shedlock then asked me, he said, well, I don't understand. I don't disagree with anything that Peter said here. Enlighten me as to why he was wrong. I said, well, I got two reasons. I got two things. First, April 2014, gold drops from 1650 to 1400 in 24 hours over the less than two trading periods. From noon on a Thursday to 4 o'clock on a Friday, gold dropped from literally 1650 to 1400. I know, I was there. It was the last time that the gold market dropping actually made my heart rate flutter. Because it was at that point that I said, I give up. I give up. You fuck these people. I can't take this anymore. I look at volatility today like we saw on Thursday, and I'm like, volatility is for other people. I don't even get upset anymore when I watch Bitcoin. Bitcoin moved 25% while I was out. I was out gaming on Wednesday night. I went and checked my phone between, we started playing Star Wars Outer Rim, and 2 hours later I checked my phone. I'm like, oh, look, we went from 13.7 back to 11,000. That's nice. What are we playing next, guys? Okay, cool. Let's play this. All right, fine. Great. It literally doesn't even bother me anymore. The Dow drops 800 points. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Volatility is for other people. When you've lived in the gold space as long as I have, when you've had as many, I don't, but part of the reason why is that I don't have a lot of skin in the game. I have some skin in the game. I own my cryptos, and my cryptos got hit, but I didn't, but I looked at it and I went, yeah, so we're back to where we were trading yesterday. If I had never looked at my phone between yesterday and today, I would have said, oh, Bitcoin didn't move. I'm already up 300% on my, I'm already up 300% since March. I'm crying that I'm not up 450. How greedy are you? So that was the first thing I said to Mike in response. The second thing I said was, try moving more than $9,000 out of the United States without anybody knowing it. Like, that's the first use case. I can come up with about 4 or 5 more off the top of my head. Oh, do I want to send money to somebody in China in 3 seconds flat? I can do that. We're in 5 minutes. Maybe not Bitcoin. I can use Dash to do that. They'll get it to somebody in China, and I could pay for something in my supply chain, for example. I could pay a graphic designer to design me a new logo, and I can pay them literally in 3 seconds using Dash, and it will cost me a penny. Can't do that with gold. I can hold on to my Bitcoin forever, and it doesn't cost me anything to hold. It's zero risk in terms of degradation over time. There's no interest that's being paid against it. There's no holding fees. There's no storage fees. The blockchain isn't getting mad at me for holding it in my account and not spending it like my bank does. Let's see, many other ways. I mean, it's insane to think that Peter Schiff, of all people, can't come up with one single use case in which Bitcoin is better than gold. And you should have seen the comments. If you think me calling him a moron was bad, you should see the comments in that thread. It was insane. It's unbelievable, right? And I remember arguing with Mike back during the first phase of the breakdown on Twitter. Argument, in a classical sense, arguing. Friendly arguments amongst people, because Mike and I have great respect for each other's work, even though we don't agree with each other all the time, and that's fair, and that's perfectly reasonable. We shouldn't agree with each other all the time. We should challenge each other all the time. I mean, it's not a mutual appreciation society. This shit's hard, right? So, remember arguing with him, as we approached the 8,000 or 9,000 level on Bitcoin after the pop on the way down, so like in March or something like that, 2018. We were chatting on Twitter one day, and he said, give me a good argument as to why it won't, crash to $3,000 or $2,000 or 1,000. I think he said 1,000. Mike was firmly convinced Bitcoin was going back to 1,000. I said, I don't really see that. I think that the cost of production right now is around 8,000 an ounce. The network's not really going to collapse. I could see it trading below the cost of production, and I could see the cost of production dropping because of the way the difficulty numbers will contract as miners drop off the network, and the difficulty number will then drop, and it'll take some time, and the miners will be underwater, but then eventually everything will normalize and we'll find a bottom. I was right for the most part. I said, it traded down to around $6,000, and then we got the big washout in November of last year, which I'm firmly convinced was organized by central banks or whatever. And then we traded down as low as 3,100, 3,177. And then we put in a 15-week bottoming period that was the most textbook example of a beautiful bottom that I've ever seen in all my years in looking at stocks and bonds and everything else. This is a beautiful bottom. It was a Fibonacci time series. It was beautiful. I mean, I've talked about it with my subscribers as I noted it one day, and I just started like looking at the chart on the weekly chart of how Bitcoin was bottoming and how it was building momentum to finally break out above 4,100, and then just went to the then it just went ballistic. And I was still skeptical. I'm still sitting there going, this could just be short covering. It's not a big deal. Yada. And now here we are, what? 2.5 months later, we're 12.5 grand. And people are crying that because yesterday we had a high of 13.9 and we're supposedly we should be crying. I mean, the truth of the matter is that Peter Schiff is talking his book, and he's envious in the fact that he's made a brilliant business for himself selling people gold. And that's what he's invested in. And that's his entire life is built around this idea of being that guy. So he's perfected the horse and buggy. Well, Henry Ford's showing off the Model T and running hundreds of them off the production line. As far as I'm concerned, when you have something like that, and you've invested so much of yourself in a particular solution to a problem, and sold your entire business on this idea, and your entire persona on this idea, the minute you say, nope, I don't like Bitcoin, you're trapped. From the very beginning, from the time that I started first working for Newsmax, I was the only guy at Newsmax who knew anything about Bitcoin. This was the September 2003. I was hired really in kind of like June, July, but the first issue that I wrote came out in September, and Bitcoin went through a major peak, and I actually wrote a report for my subscribers, and outside of a promotional report outside of my subscribers talking about Bitcoin. And it hit 1,000, and then it corrected. And I said, don't buy it at 1,000. Wait for it to correct 85 to 90%. Then buy it again. And it put in an 85% correction or an 88% correction, going from a high of 1093 down to about 157.30. The truth of the matter is that guys like Schiff are absolutely envious of what's happening with Bitcoin. And it's sad and it's pathetic. And I'll say that. I'll say that unreservedly. Peter Schiff has a fiduciary responsibility to his customers to give them the best advice he can. And it is in his best interest to continue to look at this. And for him to say, only gold. And while Bitcoin has put in a 20 bagger, whether you're talking about from that low of 157 to the low of the last market, or or connecting high to high from 1093 to 20,000, or from 157 to 3177. I know these numbers because I just wrote 2 different articles quoting this stuff off the top of my head. It's still a 20 bagger from peak to peak in 6 years, from trough to trough in 3 years. Gold has never performed that way. The best the gold bull market could do was a 7.5-fold increase from 2001 to 2011. Now a 7.5-fold increase is fucking phenomenal, and I caught all of that with some of my holdings. Gonna lie. I took very small amounts of money and I turned them into a moderate amount of money. I'm not busting my hand, patting myself on the back here or anything. I didn't sell the high. I held on to it. That's fine. I wasn't expecting to sell it. It was never the intention. It was to accumulate gold and then sell it whenever, it was inconvenient. It was always the idea just to accumulate gold over the course of time and have a beautiful stash of savings, hopefully generational wealth I can pass on to my daughter. I had a plan for that. If I can't make enough money to support my freaking family in dollars, why am I selling? Why what the hell? So it's very important that you understand what we're dealing with here. It's actually, in many ways, it's really, I don't say it's reprehensible, but it's really irresponsible on the part of someone like Schiff, who's as prominent as he is, to then act the way he is. And frankly, from what I understand, Gary North's doing the same thing, calling it a Ponzi scheme, calling it this, calling it that. I'm like, are you kidding me? I argued this stuff for you 10 years ago. In 2011, I was getting contacted by people like Tom Woods behind the scenes and Mike Roseff and others saying, I don't understand this Bitcoin. Please, I know you're the guy who understands it, so please explain it to me. And I did, very cordially, behind the scenes in email. And then went away going, oh, cool, thank you. Now I get it. Like, you know, and we talked about Mises' regression theorem. We talked about all this stuff. It was fine, great. I moved on with my life and then got a job with Newsmax eventually, and yada, yada, yada. And the rest is history. But Bitcoin is the future of private money. Not Bitcoin, the cryptocurrencies in general. When I use the term Bitcoin, really talking about cryptocurrencies in general. I'm not talking about utility tokens. I'm not talking about smart contract platforms. I'm not talking about software. And I'm not talking about any of that other stuff. I'm not talking about EOS or Ethereum or Tron or any of that stuff. I'm not talking about those. I am talking about the monetary substitutes, the ones, the blockchains that were designed from the ground up to be a substitute for the dollar and or gold. I'm talking about Bitcoin. I'm talking about Litecoin. I'm talking about Dash. I'm talking about Zcash, Monero. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the hardcore fucking coins. I'm talking about Decred. You want my favorite of the bunch? I'm talking about Decred. Okay? That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about systems, blockchains, that are meant to be money substitutes. Feel Komodo is in this. The Komodo is also in that same category, even though it's a blockchain deployment platform as well. But fundamentally, it's still fucking coin, and it fundamentally functions that way. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, when I talk cryptocurrencies, I mean a very specific subset of the market. I love the fact that there's thousands of cryptos out there. Again, like Lee Rockwell said to me, let 1,000 flowers bloom. 1,000 different flowers to create solutions to problems. I'm all over that. It's the future of private money. It's something I said today in my blog while I was writing all this stuff. I'm like, Murray Rothbard would have loved Bitcoin. This is the problem I have with all these fucking people who think who still consider themselves Austrian economists. Like, Rothbard would have looked at Bitcoin, argued with himself for a little bit, and then gone, oh my God, that's brilliant. That's awesome. And he would have been ecstatic. He would have a big smile on his face, talking about it, larger than life, doing the whole Murray Rothbard thing. It would have been great. Because he would have understood, just like I understood very, very quickly on, that technology always changes the definition of money over time. And gold was a the refining of gold, the finding and refining and purification of gold was a technological improvement over things like cowrie shells and salt and whatever. Bones, knuckle bones of certain animals, whatever. Seriously, guys, it's always technology. And technology passed gold by, which is why eventually it had to be demonetized in an official sense. And I hate to say that, because it would be, and if we didn't demonetize it in some respect, we would still be trapped by it, because it would still be too deflationary for its own good. What I mean by that is that the division of labor has become so sophisticated that you need a currency that can create resolution to differentiate between the smallest of transactions and the largest of transactions. Bitcoin can do that. Why can Bitcoin do that? Because it's divisible by 8 digits. That's why. But even Bitcoin will eventually become, and we're seeing it now, it's too expensive to move small amounts of money. Right? The fee today is something like $4, I think, this afternoon to move Bitcoin in a reasonable amount of time with like 5-day settlement, which is expensive. So why would you use Bitcoin? If you need to move money now, Litecoin will do it for 10 cents. Dash will do it for a penny. Okay? So you have to understand that that's why different blockchains are going to exist and different coins are going to exist to perform different market functions. Period. They will. And I don't want many ways. I don't want Bitcoin to become easier to use. I want it to be hard to use. I want it to be like gold. Because the more gold-like character it takes on, the more it can create a foundation for a new monetary system that can then be built on top of it. Just like gold is hard to move around. It is one of gold's greatest assets, is that it's hard to spend in today's economy. Makes it a great store of wealth. And in that point, Peter Schiff is absolutely right. The volatility of these assets comes from the fact, as one of my very astute patrons who hangs out with us regularly in the crypto channel on my private Slack server for my patrons, said this afternoon a very pithy thing that I immediately read it and I'm like, oh God, I wish I had said that. And he said, problem with Bitcoin is that it's an asset in the process of becoming capitalized. And I'm like, wow. And then the volatility, and then I say to myself after that, I'm like, and we're now exploring the limit of that capitalization. And it's therefore, because it's a thin market traded by people who are not professionals, there's not all the professional controls of futures and this and that, all of this stuff. And the exchanges aren't very well regulated and they're not in the hands of the freaking people who control everything and yada, yada, yada. All that volatility is a natural function of a market that is subjected to extreme levels of emotional response. Markets trade on emotion and momentum, sentiment and momentum. Said it here many, many times. And so that's what the volatility represents. And that's going to be fine. And that's going to be like that until the old monetary system goes away and a new monetary system takes its place. And there may be 3 or 4 interstitial monetary systems in the process. We don't know. We went through 4 in 3 years until Nixon finally closed the gold window. Between the London gold pool failing and Nixon closing the gold window, there, as Murray Rothbard said, and what has government done to our money, 4 different monetary systems happened. 2 of them only lasted 18 months. So understand that this is what I'm talking about at the end of the day. And the point about Murray Rothbard goes even one step further. Not only would he understood the value of Bitcoin or the potential for its value and the potential for it to become something brilliant, be a flower that blooms. It's that he would have adored seeing the open competition in the crypto market even more. It's like his dream of private freaking banking and private money was and proliferating like grass. Trying to figure out which one's going to be the best, different types of grass. Now we're going to compete amongst themselves to see which one is going to become the lawn, right? I mean, Rothbard would have adored that. It would have been a validation of his life's work, for fuck's sake. So you have to see it from, and if you see it from that perspective, you'll really begin to understand what it is we're talking about. What it is myself, people like myself and Caitlin Long and Seyfedina Moose and other in this community, in the Austrian economics community, understand the value. Understand the value prop. Understand the unique selling proposition of this thing. Understand all of this stuff at a functional, fundamental level that absolutely Mises and Rothbard and the rest of them all would have went, yeah, you're absolutely right. You guys are really forward thinking on this. Awesome. And dead enders like Peter Schiff are going to be left behind. And they're going to lose customers. And that's why he's really angry at Bitcoin. He's lost access to CNBC. He still thinks it's because he's a contrarian and they don't want to hear the truth. No, Pete, it's because you're annoying and you're one note and you're not interesting. Sorry. You're not flexible. You're not interesting. You all lost interest in what you were selling a long time ago. And that's sad. I think DNAT says Hayek would love it, but not sure, 100% sure about Rothbard. I'm sure that once Murray understood it and he was able to justify it within the context of Mises' regression theorem, and there's been so much work done on it. And then he would look at the proliferation of the market and how now we have thousands of coins all competing amongst themselves, finding their niche within the division of labor. I'm dead serious. He'd see projects like Salt, which I'm not crazy about, but you look at projects like Salt. I mean, the minute I saw Salt, I went, oh, cool, private banking. 100% reserve private banking in crypto. Cool. I'm not buying any of that. I don't have any idea whether or not they're actually going to, I think it's cool. I don't know that it's, I don't know if it's for me. I don't know if they're, full of shit, if they're a scam, or if they're this or that, but people are thinking in those terms. This is something that Rothbard would have adored. 100% reserve banking, 100% reserve lending. But again, what happens to salt when people can't pay? All right, again, just something to think about. I haven't really given salt much thought, but beyond that, but I thought it was very interesting. Okay, I'm going to go back through comments for the evening, and then I'm going to get you out of here. So, because we are at 40 minutes, and that was my initial rant. My God. Yes, Mark Bogosian says, hopefully, Mark Bogosian comes in and says, way early in my rant, says that we're learning all about, and probably in response to me saying we're still learning about what this thing actually means, and we should continue to learn. As people, we have to continue to update our ideas about what is and is not a value store and a value proposition. All right. Tio says the target is 100,000 and that Austrians don't have any political power. Well, they're coming in from the cold. I'll say this. So Arkvol said they've decided to stop sending me alerts for your channel. It's a first, actually. Well, I got news for you. Get in line, you and everybody else. I do try to do this by 8:30 plus or minus 5 minutes every week. After 1971, says Dragon M, is when the standard of living started dropping. Absolutely. Boom time was over and things have gotten progressively worse because of the lack of control over the monetary system. You'll let me. So Dean says he's going to let you trash Peter Schiff, but I'll defend him when you're done. No, look, man. Again, Peter Schiff's taught me a lot. He's a one-trick pony. He was right in 2008. Been wrong ever since. At some point, you have to say, you have to say you're wrong, and you have to be man enough to know that you're wrong. And he's not. And he's not. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way things are. Tom says, I used to believe Peter Schiff on Bitcoin on it being completely worthless, but the ability to send money anonymously in and of itself is valuable in a system which is becoming more totalitarian. Bingo, which is why privacy coins are going to have even more value as time goes along. I'm firmly convinced that privacy and governance are the two things that will matter most going forward in crypto. And that's the two things. When I look at a coin like Zcash, and I look at its stock to flow ratio, and I look at the transaction, the activity on the transaction level on the network, and I'm just like, why is this trading at such a high price? Because it doesn't deserve to be trading at such a high price based on those two very simple measures. Its inflation rate relative to its supply, the age of its blockchain, which is almost nothing, and the amount that's actually transacting on the network that's not just mining new blocks. Zcash should be trading about $12. It's trading near 100. Why? Privacy. That's why. Stephen Burnett says, I relate a series of social developments in the 80s, such as yuppies, to coming off the gold standard in the 70s. Ooh, yeah. Yep. Without rancor, what happens to when Bitcoin shoots to the moon, as they say, and then gets massively shorted like last time? I suppose it depends on how much you paid in the first place. It does, Arkball. What you have to realize is that you have to look at it as a time-weighted average over, like pick a midpoint of each year and then say to yourself, okay, would you own one of my other subscribers today, posted up a chart and says, look, here's the yearly candles on Bitcoin. Forget everything else. If you just look at the progressive series of lows, would you buy this asset? At the low of every year in Bitcoin, would you buy this asset? Yes. After the first 2 years, you would go absolutely yes. And then if that were the case, you'd be up a 20 bagger. Because you would have bought it around $100 a piece. $150. You'd be sitting at last year's low of $31.77. Hard to argue with that. Got news for you. Ready? In the same amount of time, Facebook has gone up 19 times. No one complains that Facebook is too volatile or it's this or it's that. It's a growth stock. Tenjin says, I read his book Crash Boost. This is Schiff. Back in 2005? Yep. I don't think Schiff's thought has evolved at all since then. I can confirm for you that the last time I listened to Peter Schiff talk in 2013 at the New Orleans Investor Conference, it had not moved. And I listened to him talk for 15 minutes, and I turned to a friend of mine, or a guy that I just met, who then we became fast friends, and we looked at each other and we went, we know more than this guy does. Let's go have lunch. I'm not kidding. That's exactly what we said. We stood next to each other, commenting on him talking, and went, but what about this and what about that? And we both were saying the same damn thing. We just looked at each other and it's like, hi, I'm Tom. Hi, I'm blah. Let's go get lunch because you're far more interesting than this guy is. That's exactly what happened. I shit you not. El Vaquero says, I killed a squirrel in my barn today. It was riddled with maggots before I killed it. Maggots didn't wait for it to die because unlike leftists, even maggots understand scarcity. I had to do that in a southern accent simply because it's so awesome. He started with, I killed a squirrel in my barn today. I lived in Argentina for a time, says Stephen Berners, at the time of the 2000 crisis. Banks closed for weeks and regular people selling their possessions on the streets just to eat. Gold or Bitcoin would have avoided all that pain. Yes, I know. They started using silver a little bit. There's a reason they are called banksters. Yes. If you want to rob people, becoming a, how do you spell thief? B-A-N-K. Cynical Skeptic says, I just came in a while ago. Have you read Putin's interview for the Financial Times? The one from last week I did. It was fucking amazing. It was absolutely amazing. But I'm not really going to talk about that tonight. But yes, I did read it. It was amazing. And everybody should read Putin's interview from last week in the Financial Times. It was truly a kind of a mission statement for who Vladimir Putin is and what he is attempting to do in Russia and with Russia's both domestic and foreign policy. Tom says, even Schiff said that he wished he could have rode the Bitcoin bubble. He always talks about the BTC millionaires in Puerto Rico now. Yeah, I know. Well, he's like, it's sad. The thing is, gold is mature and BTC is still young. We haven't even worked out how both will play out relative to each other. No, we won't. And that's why I advocate people should own both, along with a stash of cash in their local currency, so that they can write out any. Because I got news for you. Americans are going to need dollars if the system collapses, because they're still going to need to pay their fucking bills. Okay, Europeans are going to need euros, and Brits are going to need pounds, and Thai are going to need baht, and yada yada yada. But beyond what your needs are for a certain amount of time, and you decide how many months of savings in your local currency you need. Everything else should be, your other savings should be in cash and crypto, should be in gold and cryptos. And I would stay away from silver, not completely. If you own silver, that's great. If you've bought some here at these levels, that's fine. But understand that silver has a very, very limited lifespan as a monetary asset. Bitcoin is gonna just replace it almost completely. And there's so many industrial uses for silver. The stock to flow ratio is going to go to zero. It's going to be just like platinum within 5 years. The big money is in laundering money. Ask HSBC, says Stoyanovich. Tom says, I can't argue against crypto. Police can seize cash now. Transporting gold, large sums of cash across borders is a no-go. Financial freedom is among the other freedoms we are losing. Absolutely. I mean, like I said, during my original rant and my original use case scenario, the most important use case scenario as far as I'm concerned, to Mike Shedlock, it's like, try moving money out. Try moving more than $9,000 out of the country. I mean, they can't confiscate your freaking, your notebook or your phone that's carrying, if you got a notebook with all your private keys written down in a paper wallet, or your phone, they're not going to, the TSA is not going to confiscate your phone, right? And you still have your private keys backed up some other way anyway. And you should have them written down in some other way so you can always restore your accounts in case they are confiscated. Governments are always late to the game, but they will surely try to regulate and control crypto in the end. They will try. And that's why privacy and governance are paramount. That's why I think at this point, it's why again, I'm not going to say Bitcoin. I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist, right? I'm not. I like Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin's cool. I do not believe that Bitcoin will be the solution. But here's the thing, and this is the fun part. Look how easy it is to spin up a blockchain. This is the other thing. Let's talk about the big one that gold bugs love to talk about all the time. Well, if there's an EMP or the government or the internet goes down, which by the way, if that happens, society collapses in every way, manner, shape, or form. No one gives a fuck whether you have gold or not, because the only metal anybody's going to care about is whether you have lead and it's in a certain size and grain and it's stuck into a brass casing with a primer behind it that's not fucking destroyed. Because that's the only fucking metal that anybody gives a fuck about, because that's the metal that will allow you to eat and defend yourself. Cigarettes will be worth more money than gold will be in that scenario. And of course, if the grid goes down completely, we're all going to die from fucking nuclear meltdowns anyway, because all the power plants are going to fail, because no one will be able to run the fucking generators to keep the friggin' rods from falling. The rods in the cooling, in the cooling pools outside of all these fucking Gen 1 reactors are all going to friggin' fail anyways. Who gives a fuck? So, but leaving all that aside, let's think about this for a second. If the grid goes down, society collapses, you name it, they take the internet down. Let's just call it grid collapse. If some guy has a backup copy of, let's say there's a solar flare, right, because the poles are shifting, a massive CME right now, coronal mass ejection, would probably wipe out the grid in the United States, FYI. We're getting close to that moment in time with the rate at which the Earth's magnetic field is plummeting in strength. Dead serious. Say that happens, and some guy, and I will be shocked and amazed if some guy running a Bitcoin node right now, or somebody over at the Bitcoin Foundation, doesn't have an up-to-date backup of the blockchain on a hard drive in a Faraday cage, along with a computer or two, to get things up and running again. So after the coronal mass ejection. So let me ask you a question. How long will it take the current crappy T+3 settlement, insanely complex and balkanized monetary system, the ledgers on every bank and the central banks and all this stuff, it's on different ledgers, on different systems, different operating systems, and different, all of it, everywhere. How long would it take for that to come back up? Months? If ever? I'll bet you dollars to dog shit that the committed sons of bitches who are currently mining Bitcoin wouldn't have the friggin' network back up in 3 days. Now, would anybody be moving money around with it? Ooh, God knows, but possible. When I think about it in those terms, that's those guys' business. It matters to them. And the cost of holding on to the Bitcoin blockchain is cheap. It's fucking $200 hard drive. The whole thing. And once you got one copy of it, you can restore the entire network. Because then you can propagate the blockchain to the next guy and the next, because that's a peer-to-peer network. It's the beauty of decentralization. That's in the worst case scenario. We rebuild the grid. We get copper wire running again. There's backup chips where people build computers and we start talking to each other again. Fucking brilliant. I didn't even see how it would be hard. Now, I'll bet you who would get their system up and running better, quicker. The Bitcoin guys or our government and our banks? I know who I'm betting on. So while they'll try and outlaw it, privacy coins, you can just start up another blockchain tomorrow. In the original article that I wrote back in 2010, I'm going to read you the end of it before I go, because I'm almost done. I'm going to read you the end of that article. Okay. I'm going to go back. Oh, I didn't link it. Son of a bitch. I'm going to go back and edit that post. Oh, alternative. Hold on for just a second. There it is. I'm going to scroll all the way to the end. I'm going to read this directly to y'all, just so you know. All right, because this is important. So I know that, and I quote, I know that the current system is not only immoral, but also failing. I'm fond of saying that the two most abundant things in the universe are hydrogen and the human capacity for self-delusion. Hyperinflation always occurs after a mass awakening from the delusion about the issuer's ability to protect a currency's value. We are flying into the monetary equivalent of coffin corner. But if as Gary North has been saying all for years now, that gold is not money and digits are. The digits that are designed to be as good as gold may be one of the ways to disabuse us of our delusions. And if the empire does strike back at us for doing so, so what? Someone is working on that problem right now. It'll be in version 2.0. You have to understand that at the end of the day, the technology that created Bitcoin is cheap. The enforcement of trying to stop it is expensive. And at that dynamic is all you need to know about why the governments will eventually fail at trying to stop it. I say to these guys all the time, they've been trying to shut down the Pirate Bay for 15 fucking years. Still haven't succeeded. McFly asks thoughts on the market after the G20. I haven't seen anything from the G20 that's made me even get interested, other than like Macron backing off on climate change and nothing. I didn't really see anything. Thoughts on Litecoin and the halving in August, asked the Dirknat. I think that it sets, with a stock to flow ratio, it sets Litecoin on a potential path to $1,300 by next year. While Bitcoin would be looking at 55 grand. Schiff's main issue with Bitcoin is that it's not money, which you would have to agree with, right? It's become an asset commodity, as you have said. Schiff's biggest problem with Bitcoin is that it's not money because he's thinking about it not being money right now. But gold isn't money either. So Peter Schiff is full of shit. Period. I mean, you can spend, the only reason Bitcoin is not money is because it still has value to be accreted to it. It's still undervalued. Gresham's law states that undervalued money is hoarded and overvalued money is circulates. Gold is no more a good. Why would you spend gold, guys, if you think it's going to go up in price? Why would you spend gold? You wouldn't. I don't. I spend dollars. Dollars suck. I'm not going to convert my dollars into gold just so I can virtue signal about how great I am to then go pay somebody in gold. Who's just going to convert it right back into dollars anyway? Why not cut the fucking middleman like Peter Schiff out and just pay him directly in dollars? It's just fucking stupid. It's a bullshit argument. It is a store of value if you think about it. It's like gold. If gold is undercapitalized because gold is undervalued relative to the dollar, well, then got news for you. So is Bitcoin. Because it performs the exact same function and more so. In every way, it is a superior form of medium of exchange, unit of account, and store of value. In every way, it's better. That's not to say that it's better right now for everyone. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't own gold. Of course you should own gold. Banner at the bottom. No, right down there. It says right there. Gold, goats, and guns. It's not, doesn't say Bitcoin, gold, and guns. Goats and guns. Kill the rhyme scheme. But I could have just as easily, the alliteration. I could have just as easily, Bitcoin, beer, and boobs. I mean, it would have worked just as well. Bitcoin, beer, and blunderbusses. There you go. I could have named this Bitcoin, beer, and blunderbusses. It would have worked just as well. Okay. Tom, it was one of those days. 15 minutes after the squirrel, there was a small bull snake in my garage trying to eat a mouse caught in a mousetrap. Snakes understand scarcity too. I have caught many a snake. This is why I got rid of my laying ducks, by the way, because I didn't want. I got tired of fighting them. But the snake, I would always go out to collect the eggs in the morning, and there'd be some friggin' snake in ego flagrante, like in the process of eating one of my frickin' duck eggs, and his mouth's only this big, and the duck egg's this frickin' big, and yet he's got. And I cut him in ego flagrante, and then I put 35 grains through his head. Poor guy, and kill the egg, but got to. I'm tired of that shit. And then they stink, and you got to throw them away. That's a fucking pain in the ass. So I got rid of the freaking duck eggs. Let somebody else deal with that shit. I make enough money now. I can actually pay somebody else for duck eggs. I'm happy with that, but I love it. Lead 142 grain long range AccuBonds. I have plenty of them. Reach out and touch someone. Yep. The one says the upcoming financial crisis will cause the U.S. to go either full Austrian or full Marx. It'll be full Marx. Stephen Byrne just reminds us this is all the reason why I have my ham radio license. Oh, God, I love it. That's fucking great. Can store data on an optical drive. Not too bad. There are thousands of blockchains, but isn't that in its disfavorability? No, not at all. The thousands of look. The market has to test all the different options, most of the crypto projects are crap. Most of them are going to fail. Many of them, 90% of them are garbage. Theodore Sturgeon, 90% of everything that's ever been produced is shit or garbage, right? Is crap. I think he said crap. He didn't use shit, but it's the same thing. Could I do a live stream about secession and the breakup of the United States? I could, but they're not far enough along for that, Jonathan. I think that would be, I could one of these days. Maybe I will, but I don't know. Liz Sandy says the blockchain is brilliant. Its morality makes it a good investment. Bingo. Thank you. Very well said, love. An EMP-driven grid failure in the U.S. would be catastrophic as there are no more transformer manufacturers left in the U.S., and they would have to beg China or India for new grid transformers. I didn't know that. Thank you. The goats thing is cool. I do. Bitcoin booze and Berettas. Ooh, yes. I like that. I think I like that better than Bitcoin booze and blunderbusses. I like Berettas. Nice. But I also don't want it. But blunderbusses is better because then that way I can stay neutral. You know, I can stay company neutral because I'm not a huge fan of Berettas, to be honest with you. I would prefer to do it with C's, right? I prefer to do it with like, Cash, Cox, and CZs? I don't know. Whatever. Okay. I'm off the top of I'm a CZ guy. I love my Czechoslovakia. I love my CZ 85 Combat. It's one of the greatest guns ever made. It's a fucking amazing thing. It eats any ammo I want, and as long as I don't limp wrist the motherfucker, it's a tack driver. I barely even have to point. I barely have to even aim because the gun puts itself on target. And it's a full frame. And it's a beautiful full frame 9. And I've got it nickel boron. My nickel boron, as a matter of fact. It's fucking great. Surgeon's Law. Yes, 95% of everything that's ever been produced is crap. All right, guys. Your time is more valuable than farming duck eggs. Yes, Stephen Burnage, I understand that. But it's also, you have to remember that sometimes doing those things is a way to, you get value in your life by going out and spending time doing other things. That gives you time to reflect on the things that you are doing. You know, and I understand that, and my partner makes this point to me all the time. Like, yeah, but do you go work out? Yeah. Well, why do you go work out? Because it makes you feel better. Well, guess what? You know, when that stuff was working well and it was accreting value to my life, I kept it. Like milking goats and all this other stuff. I don't milk the goats anymore. I cut them off last week. I said that's enough. We're just going to keep them. We'll have them. We'll breed them. We'll sell the kids. We'll have them as a backup plan in case things go bad again and we need to start milking goats again. But right now, I just don't want to do it. I milked goats for 9 years and I'm kind of over it right now. And I'd like my hands to not be, you know, too strong for their own good, and that keeps me from being able to play musical instruments and other things that I enjoy doing. And it's just been, and I need to get away from that. So, but Berettas are Italian, I know, but they're also aluminum frames, and I don't give a fuck about it. My wife's got a Beretta 92 FS. It's a nice gun, but it's just not for me. So, all right, guys. I don't know about you, but I had fun tonight. I really enjoyed going down that trip on memory lane and going through all of this. So I hope you enjoyed it as well. I know it was, you know, a little blockchain heavy, but you know, whatever. You know, it could have been blockchain, booze, and boom. Maybe, I don't know, whatever. All right, so I'm done for the evening. I'm out. I don't think I'm going to be on anytime tomorrow. Maybe I'll come on tomorrow night. My wife's still not back from Ohio yet. I'm not sure when she's coming home. But, oh, D-Nats, you're cool, dude. You're good. Don't worry. Don't you worry. I prefer people to challenge. As long as you do it respectfully, we're good to go. Right? So, somebody moved the Rickenbacker. Yeah, I moved the Rickenbacker. I played it the other day. So, you guys take care. You have a great evening. A great weekend. Probably. See you on Monday at 8 o'clock. Be well. Buy Bitcoin. It won't hurt. Trust me. Keep your stick on the ice.